Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our second event of the Juneteenth Week of Action. I just got off a panel with Hamlin Mitchell talking about reparations with John Thompson, Representative John Thompson, Ruth Richardson, Nick Muhammad, Thomas Berry from the Civic Network. Super excited about this discussion with two powerful Black women to talk about education for Black children and just some of the issues in St. Paul Public Schools and schools here in the Twin Cities. We have Khulia Pringle and Jennifer McPherson. Khulia Pringle is an advocate for children in Minnesota schools, Citizens Ed, right?
No, I'm the Midwest Regional Organizer for National Parent Union. I'm a Bright Beam activist.
Bright Beam in the house. And Jennifer McPherson is endorsed by the Green Party Black Caucus for the St. Paul Public School race. How you doing, Ms. McPherson?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Okay, and then I'm just started off talking about suspensions, and then I'm gonna let you guys take it from here.
Okay.
What are some answers? It's Juneteenth, so our focus is kind of on Black children. And our children Minnesota has one of the worst education gaps in the country, and our children are suspended at high rates. What are some of your thoughts and ideals about that?
It's disgusting. It's a damn shame. Minnesota is one of the best education system in the country, and for Black and Brown and Indigenous children, it is at the bottom. When it comes to suspension rates, Black children are more likely to be suspended. When it comes to special ed, Black kids are more likely to be referred to special ed because of behavior problems. When it comes to teacher diversity, there's 96% white, a white teaching pool in the state of Minnesota. Our curriculum is whitewashed. There's no culturally responsive teaching. Our kids aren't learning how to read. And thus we have all the other disparities that come out of that when it comes to economic housing, just about any of the criminal justice system. There's disparities everywhere, and it starts in pre-K. It starts in the womb, but as far as when that child actually, the healthcare system we know also has disparities. So when that child is in the womb, they're experiencing the disparities. But once that child is then indoctrinated or entered into the education system, that's when it's formalized.
Wow. Ms. McPherson?
I'm going to have to agree with that one. That's very true. As far as like in the public school system, our children are, getting in trouble more often because there's a miscommunication across cultural languaging. Our immigrant children, refugee children, they're able to come into the system with their home language first and then being taught English as a second language. We're taught that we have to come in saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, or we're in the principal's office all day. And that's one thing that they need to stop doing, because I'm not saying that yes, ma'am, and yes, sir is bad, but we live in Minnesota. We're not down south. We don't have that teaching up here. And we don't have that teaching because we're not looking for it. Within our school system, there's been plenty of times where I've personally told them that we need a balance. We need to go out and seek Black educators. We need to seek people who look like our children. But instead of listening, they want to point out the fact that I'm a strong Black woman who would never be at the decision-making table. Well, I won't be at the decision-making table because you're trying to stop me from being at the decision-making table. So once we are able to have our voice at that table, we will see plenty of change. But until then, we're not going to see the change because they don't want the change. They have racial equity in the schools, and we're not seeing it in action. We see it in paper, we hear about it, but we're not seeing it. Because when our kids go to school and say, well, I heard different about MLK, It's a challenge.
Mm.
Why are our kids in trouble for challenging and speaking the truth? I had a ninth grader this year who they had an open discussion after the what was it? It was before the election, and they had an open discussion. And when my daughter had brought up some things, the teacher was telling her, "Well, I've never heard of that before. How can you lead a discussion on stuff that you have no knowledge of?" You know,
Wow.
I was raised to speak without knowledge is a sign of ignorance. And that is what our district has been doing for years and years, is speaking without knowledge. They want to speak for the Black community. They don't want to speak to the Black community. They want to tell us what to fear, what to feel, how to act. But when it comes down to it, we're not doing it right. So we're in trouble. So we need that seat there, so then we can take control and get our kids educated, and they can show who they are in school all the time and feel comfortable and proud doing it.
With some of the money coming in, I know there's been some talk about funding, and I don't know if there's COVID money, but I know there's a big talk about a lot of the money that's coming into Minnesota schools in general. What is that conversation about in our children, Black children specifically, but our children, so-called children of color, getting their fair share?
That is something I have been very vocal and on top of as much as I can. I can tell you on the state level, MDE is not doing a good job of making sure that all people who are going to be impacted or the most needed or going to be most affected by whatever money that's supposed to trickle down at the table. We just had a press conference calling them out. We're going to have a virtual town hall demanding that they come and do some community engagement. I did do a community engagement virtual town hall with Superintendent Graff, and there's one sort of planned with St. Paul Public Schools. I tried to get Gothard to actually show his face. I guess he's gonna pop in and pop out. But the idea is I will be giving parents the opportunity, I believe it's June 24th from 6 to 7, an opportunity to tell the district exactly what it is that they want to see happening with the money. The problem is what I've been seeing is all the districts have their own priorities, and they're aligning this money with what the federal government is saying that the priority should be. So even though they're saying that they're taking recommendations, we'll see what those real recommendations look like for Black, Brown, and Indigenous children, but they already have their own priorities set. So for me, it's disingenuous when you say I have a priority, but I'm gonna take your recommendations, even though this is what I think the money should go to.
Ms. McPherson?
Yeah. And that's another thing I have a problem with is recommendation. Everybody has a recommendation, but nobody has a requirement. Why are they not required to put that money into certain areas? Because once it gets to the district, it could be given out for Gothard's raise. It could be given out for whatever they want to give it out to. And the fact that they're, having a meeting to hear you is a big step, but that doesn't mean that they're going to hear us.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that they need to understand is that you keep bringing us here, but you're not listening. You're not taking action. You're not doing anything that's even remotely good for any child, even the white child. And that's what people need to realize is that when Black people ask for the proper treatment, instead of treating us properly, they start treating white people improperly. To say, hey, cops don't kill just Black people, we kill white people too. You see that? We just shot him right there. Well, that's not what we're asking for. We're not asking for you to shoot everybody. We're not asking for you to undereducate everybody. We're asking you to treat everybody fairly and properly. One thing that people fail to realize is that when we're talking about the educational gap, why are we chasing white children when it's Asian children above them? They're not pointing that fact out. We don't want to be where the white children are. That is not our goal any longer. Our goal now is, can we be educated like the Asian children? because they're pulling A's and B's, they're making honor rolls and everything else, but every other child. So when people say people of color, I get highly offended because Asian people are put in the people of color and they are not struggling. So to say people of color, that's just to overshadow what the Black people is actually going through. I'm not going to overshadow my trauma and my struggle for anybody else. When I speak about inequality, I'm going to speak Black first. I'm not going to speak people of color. Everybody else falls underneath, but once you raise like Kamala Harris was saying, once you get to the Black community, everybody else is going to lift up with us because we can't do it on our own. They won't allow us to do it on our own because when we do it on our own, they send people to destroy what we're doing. So in order for Black people to be lifted up, we have to not only lift ourselves up, but we have to lift up everybody else under us. Because as you can see that, everybody will say George Floyd made the difference. But why did George Floyd make a difference? Because there's more white people out here on the lines. So once we get more people to come together, then the difference starts to show. And that's one thing that people are failing to realize in education. It's the same way. It's the same structure, same system. We have to break down all the barriers and show that Black people need this. If we want to tie ourselves to any group, it should be Native Americans, because the Native American community is the only community underneath our children with a graduation rate. So I just want to point out those important facts.
So you're saying that Asian children are performing higher than white children right now in St. Paul public schools?
Yes, sir.
And also with the median income, Asians have and that's good. We're glad that they are, but like you're saying, it's not just having white people be the target of where we're trying to go. It's just getting us what we need so that we can compete.
Correct.
Really. So even economically, the Asian community in St. Paul is at $70,000. Then the white community is about 60,000. Then Blacks are down about 17,000 with the median income. So and that's why people get concerned with the term BIPOC or people of color, because it lumps us all into one group. But we have different issues that we're dealing with. We might look or have some of the same skin color, but Black people, some of our issues and our historical background are different. So how does that play out in the teaching? And
another point I want to point out is that Asian people are considered people of color, but they're considered a Caucasian. Asian people fall under Caucasian.
Really? I didn't know that. Here in Minnesota, or just period?
If you Google Caucasian, Asian pops up. Okay. And the thing is that Mitch McConnell is very racist, but who is his wife? His wife is I believe Chinese, but she is of Asian descent. They are more Asian people are accepted by racist white men. Racist white men marry Asians. So how can you tell me that Asian is a person of color, but a racist person marries them? But then when they talk about struggles and everything else, they're not really included in the struggle. They're playing on us, they're playing on our feelings, and they're pulling the wool over our eyes. I'm tired of being tricked by racism. They want us to stop where white people are only because they're pushing white people down below. It's not okay. The housing right now, if you look around, white people and Black people are having the hardest time finding housing. But then they want to say that Black people is having a hard time finding housing. We're not the only ones. We're all being pushed out of our housing.
What can we do to get more Black teachers into St. Paul public schools or schools in Minnesota in general?
We have to seek them out. We have to teach them. Nobody gets anywhere without knowing how to become a teacher. I never knew how to become a teacher. I always thought that you had to be a white person to become a teacher, a white woman, basically, to become a teacher. So I never put that on my radar as a career.
I would say that as well. As little girls, every little girl remembers playing house, school, and store. At some point, we lose that. I don't know, something's wrong with my internet for some reason, but at some point we lose that thought because of that school system, we don't see it. But for me, the biggest pool where you get the teachers, they're right in the school system. Like that's where the kids are. If you want to recruit teachers, you make sure there's a pathway for students to continue on to come back and teach in their school. If you don't want that to happen, then you just make sure that there's people like me and Jen who just, continue to see the same people. And we don't even aspire to even think that it is in the possibility of, it being a part of our dream. And I eventually did become a teacher because I had the opportunity to be a Promise Fellow at a charter school, and the school was ran by a Black woman. It was 96% Black kids, and I'd seen all these Black things, and I was just like, I didn't realize that this was possible. I didn't realize I saw Black teachers. I was like, wow, maybe, this is something that I need to try, and I did, and I loved it. We just need to create clear pathways from high school back into the high school or into the school system. Kids may want to do elementary, but for me, creating programs like Minneapolis Public Schools had Grow Your Own, but for me, it's simple as this. All the EAs and TAs, I know they may or may not like it because as of right now, they can enter in the system without having a degree. For me, if that's going to be it, there needs to be some sort of, like when I leave high school, I can go into a 2-year program at St. Paul College and be able to get an entry-level position into the school system, whether that's a para or EA, but some sort of supporting role. Once I finish that, then I should be able to have a job in that system while I finish my 2-year degree to go to school. That way, I'm not putting myself in poverty for 4 years trying to teach, because you will put yourself in poverty because you got to do student teaching, which is 3 months of free work of teaching. That's another part of making sure that making sure that there's no barriers to teaching. That was a barrier for me. I had to put off student teaching because I couldn't afford to teach for free for 3 months. So, like I said, creating clear pathways, making sure that economically it's not going to be between I'm going to be hungry or becoming a teacher. And then also increasing teacher pay. I normally don't shout that because right now academic outcomes for Black and Brown and Indigenous children are horrible. So for me, you don't deserve a raise when not all kids are going where they need to go. I do believe teachers do hard work and they do need to increase their pay. But as of right now, I don't think it's well deserved at the moment.
So that what you just said about brings me to something Jennifer was talking about with zero tolerance policy with teachers and staff. How do you guys feel about that?
It needs to end, and right now it's actually in negotiation in the House and the Senate. Senator Chamberlain, we agree on certain things, but we disagree on many others, and he doesn't believe that the ending zero tolerance policies is a good thing. And he claims that principals and teachers are the ones that are saying that they don't want to end zero tolerance policies, practices and policies. We know that when Valeria tried to do it at St. Paul Public Schools, the teachers union organized and got her fired. So that tells me that teachers and principals are okay with their zero tolerance policies and practices, using things like, I'm blanking on the term, but it's pretty much when a child is being disrespectful. And if the child is being disrespectful and that's based on your, perception of that child being disrespectful, that child could be suspended. Willful defiance, that's what it's called. They're able to suspend under willful defiance. So if I'm a child, I can't read, I didn't learn how to read, I'm in 4th grade now, you called on me to read out of class and I get mad and throw my backpack, or I'm not paying attention to what you're saying, now I'm about to be suspended. I can't read in the first place. You didn't provide any interventions. Now I'm showing out. I'm getting less schooling because I'm getting suspended. You don't want to deal with me, so go ahead and refer me to special ed. That way I'm not learning shit. You could just require the basic education possible, and hopefully you'll find your way to the criminal justice system. I'm so sort of housing program, crying and begging Democrats for scraps because you can't read.
Wow, exactly.
Yeah. And I'll go on and say that my oldest daughter, she's in special ed, and she had a lot of struggles in school, and her principal was calling the police on her.
Wow.
And she was on medication, everything. My child got ADHD, ODD, PTSD, and anxiety. So I told the principal in the school district, I said, look, by you knowing everything that is wrong with my child, you know, everything, you know, is labeled, documented, everything, and you suspend her. But if a child had a seizure in school, you won't suspend them. So you get what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
our kids can have documented issues and still be in trouble for having issues with those issues.
Mm.
So why is that okay? When I could remember back in second grade, I had a teacher that my older brother had before me, and she said some racist stuff to him. And my mom reported her, and I ended up having her in the second grade, and she said racist stuff to me.
Mm.
And she was able to continue to work another 30 years before she retired with a pension.
Wow.
So if she did that to two people from one family, how many other children was affected?
Mm.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And speaking of that, we're about to protest tomorrow at Minneapolis Public Schools because they're not teaching our kids how to read. And there's been two racist teachers that have been exposed in the last couple months. One at Washburn wanted to wear a Trump mask to protest on the day of the Chauvin verdict. And then the other teacher, a Lake Harriet teacher, told a Black student that because they were talking, that statistically Black kids aren't as smart as white children, and they were proving that right now. That's what we have to deal with.
Yes.
And you're right. After becoming tenured, there is no firing. They're just like the police officers. They can kill and there's no consequences.
Yes. And I keep trying to tell people it's easier to fire a police officer than it is a teacher once they make tenure. And we've seen it time and time again. Ariando fired 4 cops on national TV. No meeting beforehand. But these teachers can sit in here and traumatize our children and send them into that system and not be fired. And then I have plenty of teachers who have come to me and say, can you please help me? They're being bullied by other staff because they support the LGBTQ community, because they have children in that community. They spoke up and got fake reports in their file. I have other teachers that have stuck up for children, Black children, and have been suspended without pay. Teachers got their pensions taken away for sticking up for Black children. SPPS
I know
is
a
so
few of those
wrong.
teachers. Sarah
SPPS.
Dickhausen is one of them, white teacher who spoke up and got fired.
Yes. A lot of them are white teachers.
Wow. So, hey, so right now we're blessed to have Khulia Pringle from National Parents Union, Jennifer McPherson, a candidate for St. Paul Public School Board race, and Gerald Perry, a candidate for mayor in the Minneapolis 2021 race also. So we're having a conversation. It's Juneteenth. We're talking about the education of our children in schools. And so I asked a question about zero tolerance. So right now there's a zero, and what Ms. Pringle said is there's a zero tolerance policy for children. But I think Ms. McPherson is running on a platform that says zero tolerance for teachers and staff. Like you're not gonna, like, one mistake, or I don't know how, but if there's zero tolerance for our children, should there be zero tolerance for the teachers? And whoever wants to jump in.
So I just say,
yeah, there absolutely should be zero tolerance for teachers. The teacher at Miss Hanson, I'm going to say your name, from Lake Harriet, is trying to get a job at one of the most blackest school, Patrick Henry. How does that happen? You just got through telling a black student that they're not as smart as a white kid because they were talking, and they're proving that. The teacher at Washburn is on paid leave right now. There is no accountability for any part of the system, whether the kids are getting mislabeled, misdiagnosed, suspended, not learning how to read, teachers not being accountable for none of these things, principals, all this money's coming in. And as Jen McPherson said, you do have some white teachers and black teachers that will or try to speak up, and they end up getting penalized. And there's not a whole system of them to try to combat it, together. They're just in their individual silos. So they get reprimanded, and then nothing really happens in the system.
Wow. Mr. Perry, you want to chime in real quick?
Absolutely. I think there should be zero tolerance as far as our educators. And even going further than that, I think the educators should be from the city, from the neighborhoods that they're teaching in. Not bringing in people from from different cities, just like the police bringing people from different cities to govern the people that live here, to terrorize the people that live here, and then go back home with their paychecks and everything, taking money, resources out of our city that could be paid for to educate our children. We can do that, and it's almost intentional that it's not being done. So that's something we're definitely looking at. That's something I would definitely support. Zero tolerance for teachers, period. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
So, Mike,
there's no other job where you cannot do your job and still get paid. You know what I mean? If a doctor isn't performing, like, they're gonna get fired.
Exactly.
Can I just say that teaching is the most important job in the world. They teach our children who become the future.
Right.
So to sit up here and act like teachers have no impact is crazy. Our kids are with our children are with their teachers longer in a day than they're with us. So that's very detrimental to their mental. We have to protect our children. And when that's like with COVID, when they sent the kids back and said parents was not allowed in the district, that was my first clue not to send my child back. Because my child if I'm not able to come into a public building to see how my child is, and all I have to do is take your word, and your word has been garbage the last 8 years, I can't trust my child with you. And I try to tell as many parents as possible not to send their child back. And now I have parents like, I wish I would have listened. My child caught COVID.
Wow.
Where's the COVID numbers? We've had teachers that was COVID positive sent back to classrooms and told, don't say nothing.
Wow.
They will switch from building to building. SPPS don't want this information out there, but there needs to be a full investigation into SPPS and SPFE for their lack of leadership and lack of caring for our children. I believe that SPPS is solely responsible for the reparations to Black children. They need to go back and pay us. Our children deserve something. There should be money in accounts for our children. Every child that has went through SPPS, I don't care if it was just 1 year, deserves something in the bank account towards education or something of their choice, a business, something. Because you damaged our children. You prevented us. Terrell Suggs is a Super Bowl champion. He left SPPS. But I remember when we was in elementary school, he was talking about going to the NFL. You'll never make it. Where's he at now?
Wow. Yeah.
You can't tell me this isn't a problem. I'm a SPPS graduate. I graduated in 2000. Well, I will say it was way better then than it is now.
Wow. The curriculum, what they're teaching our kids. You guys want to chime in about that?
They're not teaching them enough. And when I asked for more during NAPIT, when I asked for it to be more centered towards African instead of Asian, I got called radical. National American Parent Involvement Day brought to you by the NAACP, and I'm too radical because I'm asking you to teach my child about Black issues. I don't even know what to say about that.
And that's almost everything. It's like we got to put everybody else ahead of us after we then did all this work to get all these different things accomplished, and then everybody goes in front of us, you know. And then, like Miss Jennifer, when you speak up about it, then it's a problem. You know, we got Somalian daycares, we got Hmong daycares, Hmong this, Hmong that, Little Mexico, all this different stuff. But when we ask for something geared specifically for our children, then it's an issue. There's not enough money, or it's too radical, it's too progressive, it's too liberal, it's just crazy. And that's something that got to change, because we're not going to get nowhere. And then it even discourages some of us from speaking up, to put voice to some of that stuff. And that part got to go too. You know, we got to understand that this is deserved. It's been reparations. People get scared about that. You know, so I even been trying to say reconciliation, but it is what it is. Reparations are owed. It's to repair something that's been broken, something that was there. It's not that we're asking for something that we ain't never had. It was there, and it was intentionally destroyed. So it should be intentionally reconciled to the people that's due.
I would just add that all that, yes, and the fact that we already know that the curriculum is whitewashed, but even further than that, we know what that does to the Black psyche of us just not knowing who and what we are and where we came from, and just getting along to get along. That is, I mean, I remember reading the autobiography of Malcolm X in the 8th grade and how that transformed my mind. I've heard from many Blacks say that they didn't realize they were Black till they got to college, or nobody realized the true history of Black folks until you got to college. And college is an opportunity. Not everybody gets that opportunity to actually do that. So to have people walking around aimlessly, not knowing who they are, where they came from, and why there's a struggle and why they need to do something is part of our problem.
Absolutely. So one part, since we're talking about reparations, one part I know on the national level and how this could work here in Minnesota is the Board of Education, we would say, of ADOC's ancestry, which would give recommendations, say, to St. Paul Public Schools or the Board of Education about the curriculum in schools that are predominantly Black, what resources look like, who to buy the chalk from, what the curriculum looks like, what discipline looks like. What do you guys think about something like that?
I like that. I would prefer a whole new curriculum. In the month of February, I would like history to be focused only on Black history. A lot of people don't even know that Mexico helped us win the Civil War. They help us, to become free. Wow. Because they stopped dynamite from coming. He was coming to help the South. So why don't everybody know why Cinco de Mayo is important to Black people? That's sad to me. Why don't people know how South Korea was going to, meet with the president of the United States until the Black Panthers went over there and told them the real deal, what was going on over here. And then they said, until you treat your people right, I don't want to meet with you. All of a sudden, America hated them. Fidel Castro. Why do we hate Cuba? Why is every country that supported Black folks hated by America? We're not learning anything. We need that to change. Sister Asadi is in Cuba. Cuba ain't gave her up. Cuba's not making her come back because they support Black people and they support their freedom. So we need to change what's going on in our system for our people to feel free and be happy about who we are. There's no reason to feel sad. I'm gonna just say I am sick and tired of every time I turn on the news and our mayor is talking is we're a nation of immigrants. we're not a nation of immigrants. Immigrants chose to come here. Black people were forced here. So stop shutting us down. Stop making us be quiet. You know, we wasn't chosen. We were chosen to be here. We didn't choose to be here. But what did we do? We turned it around. We built our lives here. We've been to war. You know, we've had family members die in wars for America. You know, so all that stuff needs to be in our curriculums. It is nothing wrong with that. You know, they got to stop silencing the Black community by every time an issue happens saying, but we're a nation of immigrants. But we're not a nation of immigrants when it's our children being murdered in the street. We're not a nation of immigrants when we're asking each other to stop killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to take a real approach to everything that's going on, because real life don't take a fantasy approach. So why should we?
That's exactly right.
You know, and Jarrell, I love that when you spoke honestly. If I lived in Minneapolis, I would be proud to call you my mayoral candidate. I'm like, this is the man right here, because you're not sugarcoating anything and you ain't said much.
What's
the glory? Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Tran, go ahead.
No, did you want to chime in after what she just a direct response?
No, I was gonna say that's exactly right. And first I said, to God be the glory. I appreciate that very much, sister. But the truth is the truth, no matter who tells it. So why not get it out there? And that's the only thing that's gonna start that wheel of healing. The process of healing is knowing the truth, what it's done, and then trying our best to repair that, you know, and just move forward. But we're not going to be able to do that until, like Miss Jennifer said, we know exactly what it is, you know, and why these relationships are like they are. It goes back to us and trying to oppress us, trying to oppress our children. And we got to do everything in our power to reverse that. And like she said, even the leadership, they speak about this stuff as if it's not real. Like if they can just say what's going on and we're going to be like, okay, yeah, that's what it is, which some people are. Most of them is white folks, because they're not on the ground seeing it real life for what it is day to day, you know. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to get in this race, realizing we can march and protest and rally all we want to, but and they're even going to say that they're defending that, you know. That's what they're going to say. Oh, I protect your First Amendment right. But where's the action at for what we're asking for, you know? And then send the same people that we're marching against to come and shut us up some more, lock up some people, beat up some. This is terrorism.
Yeah.
You know, and we keep saying racism, white supremacy. It's white terrorism, you know, and then even calling it racism. And then people defend it by saying, no, that's one group of people. We're not like that. This is apartheid that we're experiencing. The government then stepped in and is helping all these systems do what they do. It's institutionalized. We keep saying that part, but let's put the real label on it so that people can identify it and know that we can do something about this. This is against the law. The United Nations, it's against the law, just like murder. But it's against us, so it's almost like a blind eye is turned to it. And we're going to protect your First Amendment right, but everything else is for the birds. It's crazy. And until we get in them leadership positions, it's going to stay exactly the same way, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. The numbers are even all messed up because we're lumped in as African Americans. So we got everybody else, Somalian people, East African, everybody's mixed in this one group. And we're talking about 30 million of us in America. We don't know how many of us there are. It could be a couple million for all we know.
There's about 35 million Black people, ADOCS, and then as far as Black people on the whole, probably about 45,000 Black people in America. Miss Pringle, going back to the rally that's happening tomorrow. And the literacy, so a literacy framework?
Yes. So I just learned today. The superintendent. I mean, let's just start with 4 out of Black kids can't read a grade level. Let's just start with that. Um, so something needs to happen. That would be unacceptable for a white child. And it's 60% of our children that are not reading at grade level, and they're not making a year's worth of growth. You get kids in 5th grade who are reading at 1st and 2nd grade level, and it's unacceptable. And here, this man in Minneapolis, including Goffin, I'm gonna get on him too, but all these plans, these racial equity plans, these strategic plans, we're gonna have all these people read by, they ain't even fulfilled their own goals and their own plans. And so they came up with a framework and not a plan. It's not going to be voted on. So it's just pomp and circumstance. It's just, here, we're not doing good. Here, we're going to tell you we're doing something. And then that's just that. They don't have a chief academic officer over there. They have somebody that's been in the interim for a year. So there's been no chief academic officer for the last 5 years. How important is literacy? You know what I mean? So that's what the rally is for. In addition to, you have racist teachers in your schools who is also perpetuating the illiteracy of a whole communities, I should say, of people. Literacy is the foundation. If you can't read, you're not going to be able to fill out a job application. You are not going to be able to have proper housing. Your life expectancy for and you're set up for every disparity once you leave 3rd grade and you're not reading. Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
I was going to say that with the literacy, that is such a big issue because my oldest child, she was behind in her reading, and she had this really good reading teacher through St. Paul, and my child jumped like 5 grade levels, 5 reading levels in 1 year. And the exiting principal fired her. And we went to the district as parents, wrote letters and asked them to stop that termination. And the district looked at me and said, we got to fire her before her 3rd year because she's going to make tenure. I said, why do you want to fire her? We don't want kids jumping like that. That's too much in a year. What you mean that's too much? And you tell parents this? My child knows how to read because of her. And because she knows how to read, you fired the lady. Because a lot of students learned how to read, you fired her. So that's something else. They don't want us to learn how to read. But the thing about it is, when we go back into our history, what do we know about Creole people? What was Creole people used for? When we was in slavery, Creole people went to school. They looked at white. They said they was white, went to school, learned how to read, came back to the plantation, taught everybody else how to read. But we don't learn that in schools. And I feel like the only reason I know that is because I am part Creole, and I get a lot of my knowledge from my mother. And so that's, it's just sad that people don't know that. And, being mixed is looked down upon. People look at me like I'm not really Black, or I have to take a stance. I have to pick a side. But my people helped darker skinned Black people. We was always there. Like, we should not feel less than, all that internal hate, all that internal stuff, that needs to stop. That was taught to us during slavery.
Yes, ma'am.
We're quick to pick up a gun on each other because we had to fight for their amusement. Men had to fight to the death if the plantation owner wanted them to do that. So that's why they're not stopping it now. Everybody has to realize that we live on a giant plantation, and the leaders are our masters.
One of the things we picked up from slavery, when black women have always felt like they've had to protect their children because they could be sold away at any point. So when Massa came and asked how little Johnny was doing, the first thing black mom would say is he's not doing good. He, just to put him down, anything not to sell him. And that continued through generation where it's not saying that, black moms don't care, but it's more of a, when you ask a white mom, oh, how is little Avery doing? And, oh, he's doing great and such, and da 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 da. But when you ask the black mom, it's a little bit more of a thing. It's not more so, and it's not all. And I'm just saying, like, there are certain patterns from slavery because of the protection that we had to do, making sure that we didn't make our child more out to be so that they could be sold. Like that has continued on as well.
Yeah, and just kind of to follow up on what she's saying is, we weren't allowed to read during slavery. So if you got a little black boy who knows how to read and say, well, what are you doing? So he can't read. He don't know how to read. He's just looking at that book, but he can't really read. She's telling the slave master, no, my son can't read because she knows, one, he could get whooped for reading.
He could get killed.
He could get killed for reading. You're reading a book? Oh, you think you can learn something? We're about to kill you for that. So that's real. And then, like she says, or we talk about our marketable skills. So, he knows how to read. I'll sell him. Now I can sell him for more because he knows how to read. So those are, so the black mama be like, oh, he ain't nothing. Oh, that dumb boy, he don't know how to read. You know what I'm saying? Yep. She's dumbing him down and talking bad to him, but actually she in her mind, she's trying to.
It's protecting.
Yeah. Exactly. And did you want to add on to that, Mr. Perry?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even growing up, I was out in the streets, gang banging and stuff. Didn't like to read. I ended up dropping out of high school. I went back to high school because this black man named T.C. Ellis came downtown where we was at and was telling us that he opened up this school for music, high school for recording arts, and he wanted us to get off the street and come into the class, right? So we go. There's a class called the Black Family. So I go into the class. I learned about the Willie Lynch letter, how they divided the North against the South, the East and the West, the light-skinned against the dark-skinned, all this different stuff. And then there was a letter that was wrote by Lou Dobbs, just died, and he celebrated it on TV, on Fox News. They loved him. But he wrote a letter talking about how blacks don't read, and all these different things, talking about if you want to hide something from a black, put it in a book. And that motivated me from that point on, just knowing that this was intentionally set up this way. And I ain't going to let that affect me. So I tell everybody that I know about, all my family, just tell them, get away from this stuff. They set this stuff up like this for a reason. It's set up for us to fail, but knowledge is power. Knowing that is there, you can avoid that kind of stuff. And like Miss Jennifer was saying, that's the reason that they don't teach it. They don't want to teach that stuff because they know that'll spark a fire in most of us and make sure that something like that don't never happen again for our kids. It's crazy.
We got about 10 minutes left. If you guys want to get some closing statements in, real quick, and just what you think, just going forward, what are some things that our children need to be learning right now for the future, considering we're in the George Floyd COVID-19 era? And just what should school look like? Because like you're saying, they're rushing kids back to school. We're opening society up and everything, but we really don't know, what's up with COVID yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say schools will probably be open this fall, but personally, I think from only middle and high school should be open because they're the ones that got the vaccine right now. Mm-hmm. So elementary school should not be open right now. It shouldn't be opening up in the fall. As far as like everything else in the district, I think that we need the pandemic and weather response team, because nobody is really gearing towards the weather. You know what I'm saying? Like kids shouldn't be stranded on buses or stuck in buildings because they couldn't get home because you watched the news and didn't believe it. So we need educated folks to get a pandemic response team, a weather response team, and watch the news, pay attention to science, and keep our kids safe. We need safety precautions in school, and we need our kids to have a trade school. We need a pre-K through 12th grade trade career school. And I'm going to say out there, yes, I want law enforcement class because my child wants to be a police officer. And I'm not going to tell him because he's Black, he can't be a police officer because he should fear them. That's the most stupidest thing you could tell a child. Because when you tell a child to fear God, what does he do? He do right because he fears God. If you tell a child to fear the police, they're going to run away like they're doing now. And if I'm going to sit up here and let a white person tell my child to run from the police, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm tired of them teaching the children that. Because Minneapolis City Council, shame on you guys, because you guys want to sit up here and say abolish the police, but then when you got threats, you called the police. But now that kids are getting killed, you ain't releasing more police on them streets. You don't give a damn about us. Mm-hmm. Jacob Fry want to get on the middle of the street, take a knee, but then when you ask him about the funding and all that, he don't want to be honest with you, and then he want to say, I'm going to give $5 million to the police. What are you really doing, Jake Fry? Mm-hmm. We don't need all this election year. We need real consistency. Come on. In St. Paul, nobody wants to do nothing about the issues. Want to sit up here and act like because we're not Minneapolis, it's not going to happen. Well, how many shooters come from Minneapolis over here to shoot? Why are our police departments not working together? I understand that there's a rift, but y'all gonna have to let that go. Let it go. Our leadership needs to let it go. And if our leadership don't want to stand out here and walk down these streets in the middle of a daytime, in the middle of the night, then they shouldn't be in leadership. I don't care if we could get together, get y'all some bulletproof vests, but y'all need to be out here on these streets. Period. And Carter, I'm sorry, man. Our families know each other. That's why I'm feeling ashamed of you, brother. For real. I expected more. His daddy a cop. I expected him to back the police more than he's backing the criminals. And I'm going to say that again. You back criminals. And everybody making laws is backing criminals. Because why am I getting a ticket for leaving my keys in my car while it's cold outside? Why is SPPS not trying to fund our schools into safety? You sat up here and said we was ready for this COVID. We wasn't ready for COVID because we was ready for COVID. You want to close the last 3 days. How is our schools too old for air conditioners?
Come on.
But they're not too old for a ventilation system.
Come on.
If you would have put a ventilation system in there, when they told you that the schools need to be upgraded, they even said you could just change the filter. You didn't even change that. I have proof that they did absolutely nothing to these buildings before they sent these kids back in. And it's also common knowledge. Like you can't sit up here and tell me that you changed a ventilation system in 2 days. Where's the money? Where's the records? You paid somebody to do this. Where's the records at it that you did it? Parents are sitting up here with their kids in ICUs because of COVID. You told them their kids wasn't going to get sick because they're in elementary school. That's sad. There's no care or consideration. But then the last 3 days gets hot. It got hot. And they knew that them schools was incubators. Because what happened in Florida when it got hot? It spread. And then somehow they was like, you know what? We can't go to school. But y'all didn't go to school until after I submitted my answers in the SPFE. Let me go ahead and say that right now. You didn't care about them kids until I spoke up. And the SPFE denied to endorse me because of child safety and TA and EA pay. But you care about these people. But the one person who gave real, authentic answers and solutions, you said would never make it to decision making. You told on yourselves. You told on yourselves. It's public knowledge. So they're not ready to open.
Wow.
And if you send your kid to school, speak to a lawyer. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Miss McPherson. Excited about your campaign. You can check her out at jennifermcpherson.org. I think that's the campaign website. And Miss Pringle, some last words from you.
Just my last words is just make sure you're on top of it. Follow federal funding. If you don't know how to follow it, follow me, Khulia Pringle. I'm everywhere. I'm with the National Parent Union. You can join and be a member. Also protest tomorrow, Minneapolis Public Schools, 430 Davis Center, protesting a literacy plan, as well as they need to fire these 2 racist teachers ASAP.
No doubt. Thank you. That's big protest tomorrow over in Minneapolis. Make sure you're there. And Mr. Perry, take us out, close us out with some closing words.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Cruz, for hosting us. Thank you, Miss Jennifer, Miss Khulia. Appreciate your work, appreciate your voice to the cause, especially when it comes to our children. I'm with the situation. The first thing that I want to do is just get the educators from the community, period. I mean, if we start there, the sky is the limit. And there's no more important thing to invest in right now than our children. There's Art Rolnick did a thing. For every dollar that's invested into early childhood education, there's a $17 return. There ain't nothing in the world where you get a return like that. So again, like Miss Jennifer was saying, start pre-K, get them in there. We can teach them, equip them for what this world got ready for them, because it's something else. So again, thank y'all for your time. I appreciate being here. Thanks for the invitation, Mr. Cruz. People.com. There's plenty of work to be done. If anybody got spare time, please, even if it's an hour or 2 a week, anything would be appreciated.
No doubt. I think all of you will be back on some more panels with us later this week. It's happy Juneteenth week to you all. We got big actions coming up all week. We got the literacy plan against racist teachers tomorrow. Juneteenth celebration rally at Hamlin Mitchell, right there on Summit in Victoria. Then we're at the Capitol at for Saturday on Juneteenth. We got rallies and actions all week. You can go to www.blacklivesmattermn.com to see our week of action tonight. We were going to talk to mothers who have lost a child to police brutality tonight, but a white supremacist ran over a protester last night over there in Uptown, so we're going to be out there for a couple hours. So we pushed that event back till tomorrow. Thank you all for tuning in. Also, this week is a very historic week. The city of St. Paul will be seating its legislative advisory committee this week. Congratulations, Miss Pringle. So that's exciting. That will be happening this week. And we'll be finding out who the other members of the committee are. So stay tuned. Keep up the good work to every. I was honored to have this powerful panel today, and look from them more later this week. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Peace.
Happy Juneteenth.
Thank you.